And I'm gonna check it here to make sure. Looks good. Says, and I'm gonna check it. Okay. We are live.
Okay, I will call to order this Board of Education Policy Committee meeting for June 23rd, 2026. So there is a possibility that a quorum of the full membership of the Board of Education may be in attendance at board committee meetings. There will be no full board action taken at any board committee meeting. Only members of the committee may vote on any item on the agenda. A live broadcast will be streamed on the school district's YouTube page. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit our SDMF YouTube site. And this meeting is being held at the new School District of Menominee Falls District Office in Conference Room 122, located at W147 and 8096 Franklin Drive, Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. And was this meeting properly posted?
It was.
It was. Thank you. All right, then we will move into the discussion items. And the first one is just, I asked that we, or Emily and Steve, go through the Neola drafting process as similar to what curriculum did, just kind of giving you guys a chance to get up to speed, review kind of what's happened over the last year, since there was a significant amount that happened over the last year. And we'll go from there. So we don't know, we can spend as much or as little time as you all want to spend on this discussion item. It looks like they printed out, obviously it was posted in Board Docs, but they printed out the full PowerPoint.
And I'll, if that's okay,
Yeah, you feel free to take over,
I'm gonna run through the PowerPoint, but I'm gonna brief it and give summary. So if you have questions, these are things that were approved by the board, and a lot of this we've already enacted. So if I change documents, I'll stick on the PowerPoint to start. So Neola itself is a company that's based in multiple states listed: Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, and Florida. So they operate in about 350 school districts roughly in the state of Wisconsin. There's a little over 400 school districts in the state of Wisconsin. So the vast majority of public school districts in the state of Wisconsin use Neola. So some of the information on the first couple of pages kind of gives you that. If you want to flip to the vetted for state and federal compliance. So one of the reasons that so many districts, including the School District of Menominee Falls, uses Neola is because they vet for state and federal compliance on a continual basis. So the policies that we're going to review a little bit and then move forward to the full board, the policies go to the full board for their full approval and consent, or wherever we choose to do it, probably the regular agenda at the next board meeting. A lot of these things, they're gonna already look at state laws that are changed. Like today, we'll be talking about Act 89. It's a huge state law that changed a lot of things. So there's things that we have to change, which is why it says Act 89 update, okay? So federal laws change too. These sorts of things are changing all the time. So that sort of backup is what they're constantly doing in the background. And we've set some policy meetings for the school year. But if there's more meetings that are needed based on laws that change, Neola will send a special update. I'll let the policy committee be aware, hey, this law changed, we're gonna have to meet in an unscheduled fashion in order to make sure we're up to speed on this. So our Neola rep is Dr. Thompson. He did present to the board a few months back. I talked to him as recently as yesterday. There's gonna be an email in your packet from Dr. Thompson, which when it gets to discussion, where he's regularly giving advice as it relates to policy, including some of the comments that came up either via email or from the last board meeting about policy proposals, community proposals. So he has suggestions and recommendations for us to consider, which is part of it. Dr. Thompson is a retired superintendent of schools from Whitefish Bay. So I do know him in his capacity as a superintendent. He's been retired a few years now. But he works now full-time for Neola in his quote-unquote retirement. He's very easy to get a hold of. Like if I have questions, I text him or call him, and we talk through anything that would come up with respect to questions. So the review and updates, we're just gonna jump forward to the part where it talks about this page, my experience with Neola as client superintendent. So this was this page here, my experience with Neola as a client. So this is Dr. Thompson presenting to the board about his experience as a superintendent using Neola. Now he works for them. It's proactive and systematic. Policies and AGs are transparent, easily searchable. With so many Neola clients in the state of Wisconsin, we can look at different, and we have in our drafting process, look at different districts that have Neola policies and go, okay, what are they doing and how are they interpreting policies so that we're not just making this up on our own. I'm not suggesting that that's what we're doing, but because they are such a large player in the policy world, it gives us a solid professional base with policies, school policies. Redirecting time to supporting students and staff, continuous improvement aspect of updates. Clear is kind, and it was being very clear is very important. So when you look at Neola templates, some that I've shared around, and you'll see in the updates, there were questions about this template and that template. It didn't take him, as long as I get a hold of him, he actually was on vacation, to his credit, when he got me those.
That's kind of.
But I texted him and said, hey, I need this, and he logged in and got it over, which is great. That's the kind of service we're getting from Neola. Overall value added is. We'll get to the dollars and cents in a second here. The drafting proposal, policy drafting, we've drafted from June 25th to January 26th. So it was quite a substantial thing. I won't go through this line by line, but essentially we had 5 drafting sessions, 5 policy review committees, 5 board approvals. It was a heavy lift in a very short period of time. There were a lot of meetings and a lot of work. Not just by us. That's not me asking for, whatever. It's more about the board was working too. The committee was working and giving feedback and suggestions. So there's a link in here to this drafting schedule. So this is a policy drafting schedule. It's actually 2 pages, and we actually did all of this. This is the work, right? Not, like I said, it's not just me. It's the committees and a lot of, you'll see policy committee, board involvement, when we were taking these drafts to the board, they were essentially giving preliminary approval, quote unquote, because we were drafting. What we're doing today is the first time that we're beyond that now. We're gonna be looking at things that were drafted and saying, okay, these things are gonna be policy active by the next board meeting. And the AGs that we act on, and I talked to you about tonight, they'll be active July 1. But we'll talk through that in a second. So this is all the work in about a year's worth of time. So we effectively did about 2 years worth of work in 1 year. And that was the desire of the board. It was also my desire. Because if we were gonna make this switch, because usually you take 2 years to do this. You do policies first, and then AGs come in the second year. To me, I'm like upfront the money, and we'll get to that in just a second here. So we're gonna jump to page 11, it says options overview. So essentially, I'll just fast forward, we chose option 1 and option 3 together, all right? We could either do option 1 or option 2. You can't do option 3 as a standalone, because you can't do updates unless you do something. But what we eventually selected was option 1 and option 3. Which was bylaws, policies, and administrative guidelines, which means their entire book. We looked at all of their AGs, which are equivalent and equal to procedures, and all of their policies and vetted them. And one of the points that Dr. Thompson said publicly was over 95% of our drafting was actually, over 95% ended up being Neola boilerplate, quote unquote. That's my word, not Neola's word. Essentially, Neola specific policies. And why is that important? They insure up to $2 million with their own legal counsel with what we've already paid. So we don't have to use our own legal counsel because we're using Neola, we're a Neola client. So they have specific attorneys, I think in Ohio, that are vetting state by state everything on a constant basis. So we selected the bylaws and procedures, which was together just over $28,000. You can see the dollar amount at the bottom. Now, we've already paid all of that money. And you can see 350 of 421 school districts, $2 million of liability coverage through Neola if we're using their templates, which we are at 95 plus, it's over 95%, but I don't have the exact number in front of me. We are now into only option 3. We've successfully completed the bylaws, policies, and administrative guidelines. We've paid all the money, and everything goes live in a couple of days, in less than a week. Because the board already approved it earlier this year. So the updates, that's what we're doing now. That's the regular work of the policy committee, is what's in green. It's that standard update process. And we don't have to stick to their update process right now. It's this particular update, which is Act 89 and 35.1. And then there's 35.2 and then 36.1. Those are the updates in the next cycle that we're working on.
Throughout
does-
the year,
What's that?
throughout the whole year or just this, cause I think it's what,
Those are the-
89 and 30
Those are the Neola updates as of today,
today.
but if there's a law passed or something like that, then they might throw a special update out there.
Okay.
Just like this Act 89 is a special update.
Okay.
Alright, so there's standard, in every Neola district, they might be going on a different day.
Yeah.
But they're all working on the same updates. It's sort of like updating an iPhone or something like that. When Apple throws the update out there, we're all getting the updates. Now, it's a matter of how we process how we process the updates, meaning coming here and then subsequently going to the full board meeting. So a few other additional points, feel free to walk over to the chairs,
Oh, those chairs? Okay.
might be more
Sorry,
comfortable,
guys.
might be more comfortable.
There's a agenda as well if you would like one.
I guess we're on.
So a couple of other things, the implementation timeline is in here, which we're already through. Are there any questions at all? I mean, he spent about half hour, 40 minutes on that full presentation, but essentially it was walking through the timeline and Neola in general, what it was. Now, what we came through was this adoption. So this particular adoption, we went through several drafts of what this looks like. Each district looks a little bit different, but these are the exact words in the adoption that occurred with the Neola templates. So which has all been adopted already for July 1. So as we sit right now, everything is gonna go live July 1 that was approved on this adoption, all right? With the exception, now that's only policies. I wanna be clear, that's only policies go live July 1. AGs will also go live at July 1, but this was for policies. And I'm gonna explain the difference, and every Neola client works the same way. So when we get to AGs, which we will shortly here, the AGs, I have approval to change, and I notify you, like the committee, right? So if we wanna change a procedure, they call them administrative guidelines. Under Neola's system, that rests in my authority. So really that stops here, and as long as you guys all agree, if we're not unanimous here with the three of you with an AG, then I'm not gonna change it. I mean, that's just how that works.
Just calling out that that's a departure from how the district has previously operated, where
Yes,
policies and AGs or procedures previously were essentially treated equal.
and that was I wanna be careful with the words. If you're having the board, the full board approving procedures, then they're not really procedures, they're policies. And because procedures and administrative guidelines are ways to make sure you're effectively and correctly doing the work of the policy. So everything in there, and Neola has templates for the AGs too. In other words, and I'm not one to stray far from Neola templates. I think every district has some uniqueness, which we do, and we're gonna hit on a few of them here. But, you know, for me, I've always liked to stay, and we are very close. You know, we do have a departure in a few areas that is in some of the things that we're gonna look at today. All right, but,
Can I ask a
yeah,
quick
yes,
question?
absolutely.
So, I understand AG is more a procedure, not for the full board vote. Is there ever, like, kind of that they're parallel, that there are options that, like, let's say there's a procedure that we could convert to a policy, does Neola offer both a policy template or an AG, or do they make a recommendation if one should be an AG or a policy?
Yes, they're very clear about what is policy and what is an AG.
Okay.
What has occurred before we've adopted, because we've adopted Neola, but before, in this district or any district that doesn't use a policy book like Neola, a lot of times there's a merge between policies and procedures and things get muddled.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about Neola is they keep those things very separate. They're very separate. And I like the system and the process of everybody seeing the strikes that I did, because the strikes that I did was, it's myself and Thompson looking through and reasons why I'm making those decisions, you can see on this little sheet. Like I wrote little notes about when we get to Act 89, I'll explain what Act 89 is. There's a lot of information in there under the overview that goes into the law, and then all of these policies are essentially about Act 89. And that's our biggest job today, actually, is Act 89 policies. Because that is a major law change for every school district in Wisconsin is carrying this weight right now. Whether they have Neola or not, if they don't and they're not doing this, I mean, there's some very specific things which we'll get into, which has to do with protections for like grooming essentially. So child protections for some very, child abuse and neglect and these sorts of things. But we'll get into that. Other questions? Good questions.
I'll just add two things. One, with regards to the legal protections in the fund, that is protecting us from someone suing us because our policy fails to do something or protect something. Like, right, if we didn't have Neola, right, we'd have to go through the old process of making Act 89 compliant policies. So like, someone could legally come at you, speak this far better than I can, I'm sure, for not having certain policies or certain protections. However, so that's what Neola protects you from. It does not protect you from doing something illegal with their policies. So if you take their policy and do something crazy, Neola doesn't stand behind you just because you have a Neola policy.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example, and we'll get into it in Act 89. There's a thing about hugging in Act 89. And it's very specific, and I'm gonna be very specific when we get to that part, because hugging is allowed still, but there's conditions where it's not. We just have to train and be clear, and not because I say so, it's the law, it's Act 89. Like every district has to be doing this, there's volunteers that have to be trained, all these sorts of things. So before Neola's involvement, if we had any question this way, we would have to go to our own legal counsel, pay for our own legal counsel to vet things. And that was done. That was done with previous book policies, for example. There wasn't a policy company to use, so they used legal counsel to vet them, which they're happy to do, but they charge us,
It costs money.
We've already paid for the book, and now we're in an update process, which I'm familiar with, and the vast majority of superintendents are familiar with, because the vast majority of superintendents work with Neola in some way, shape, or form.
And the last big thing I'll call out is just how you can tell, I don't know, maybe you guys are already aware of this, of like, the bottom just says Neola. It is 100% Neola or 99.5% Neola, and they're letting us get away with like changing 3 words. Or it can be Neola and the school district of Menominee Falls co-branded, which means it's a hodgepodge, or it can just be straight school district of Menominee Falls. Means we just made it up and Neola does not stand behind that policy at all, and it's on us to vet it.
That is correct. And that is, for example, that's in, if you'll look at, you have this in your stack, 2521, policy 2521.
Towards the back.
Policy 2521, yeah, it's toward the back. You'll flip in there, School District of Menominee Falls, 2026, and then a Neola branding. Now in the background, they are very clear in the background about what is their words and what are our words. All right, so that's an example of what Mr. Kramer was referencing. Whereas the vast majority of the work that we did, I was proud of the team and of the board, that over 95% of the drafting is aligned with the vetted Neola templates. And most districts are not at 100%. I wanna be clear, that came up in the presentation, that there's always nuances in a district, like Caitlin, for example. Caitlin Windler, who's our excellent Director of Finance and Business and Operations, she has some things that she wants to do her way that are legally vetted, we know are right, and they're based on, right? And that is, you'll see that in some of the policies as well when it comes to money. But there's certain laws that she has to follow in terms of audits, for example. But I'll reference one about, there was a request from Neola that once we do this, and we'll do this and we'll talk about it, that make sure you talk to your legal counsel about, do you want an annual report from outside groups that are raising money on our behalf? So that has to do, we'll get to that in the update. That's something that we will do to make sure that we're adhering to that recommendation. Okay?
Any other?
So right now, we're engaged with update services with Neola.
We're fully engaged. We're a full client of Neola's in all respect.
Do update services allow new policies, all new policies to be implemented, to be adopted?
Certainly, there are several policies in the background, and some of them I've linked in here actually, where it says, for example, on the other policies and AGs requested for review, there's a part here where there's an asterisk. These 3 different policies are listed here, 1, 2, 3, where I have an asterisk. This is their 1-pager here. So there's a star on either side, and in those policies, and Peggy's pulling it up on the screen behind us. We'll eventually have a screen in front of us working too. They just haven't done the splitter to them yet, but the camera can see the screen over here. So if you just wanna turn around a little bit, that one right there, that is not something being considered, but it's a boilerplate policy. So this isn't something that we have drafted, but Neola has a lot of these policies in the background that weren't selected in our drafting process.
Okay.
So am I answering your question the way?
Yeah.
Okay, so Neola has a full bank of policies.
So we could,
These are 3 examples of policies
okay,
that we didn't select that are selectable.
I see.
And then you'll see a sheet in there with an email from Dr. Thompson where he has some recommendations for us, because like I said, I did talk to him. We have regular conversations because we're a full Neola client. Not just policies, but AGs. Some districts just do policies and don't do AGs. We're doing everything plus the updates because it keeps us constantly in compliance.
What if we need a policy that isn't in their library of available policies?
I would recommend caution, and so would Neola, because somebody would have to vet it. They wouldn't. They'll vet their policies. right?
And in order to keep our coverage, do we need all of our policies to be Neola approved?
We would need a lawyer, not Neola. If we're bringing a policy that's not a Neola template or my language, like it's on that sheet.
Right.
If it's not a boilerplate Neola policy, we would have to go to our legal counsel
Okay.
and have them vet it, because policies, and there's an email that Dr. Thompson, I made available and to everybody
It
there.
looks like this.
And he had a recommendation about that. Yes, the answer is we can make whatever policies we want, but it's caution, because there's a trickle effect with policies. Meaning if we change one policy, there's probably 3 or 4 or 5 policies and AGs that are gonna be affected,
Because they interact with it?
because it's referenced in all of these different places. And so yes, the answer to your question is yes, they can do policies in whatever, but if it's not a Neola boilerplate policy, Dr. Thompson and Neola are out, and then we would have to engage our legal counsel absolutely would have to do that in order to write whatever it is that is to be written. That said, I really do think that Neola has enough policy depth and breadth that whatever it is that you're looking for is likely there. Just, we need to dig in and say, that's why I put the boilerplates in there. So that you can see, those are policies we didn't select, but that are available. They're there for us to draft if we choose to, and to add in specifics or pull out things or stick to their drafting schedule. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Alright,
Move into the Act 89 unless you guys have anything else.
Fine with that?
Okay.
alright, I'm gonna reference the overview first of all, and that's this page here. There's a detailed overview, it's sort of a summary. I think they do a very good job, not gonna go over it word for word, I just wanna reference it. That what this overview does, if you flip to page 3, it'll run through in summary. So if things are getting all over the place and we're talking about this policy and you're writing a note here, this is a good centering point for referencing what we're gonna be talking about. For example, and I'll just pull an example out there, we're gonna look at policies 1213, 3213, and 4213, because some of them deal with the board and myself, administration, and the board. Some deal with students and some deal with staff. So those are numbered differently, right? But they all deal with essentially the same topic. That particular one is student supervision and welfare, as it relates to Act 89. So I'm just giving this as an example. This is a good centering page, overview, if you will. That said, I'm gonna jump right into Act 89. So if there are questions, I'll stop after each one. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 policies that we need to update, and these 8 policies in this exact form, unless we change it here or recommend changes from this policy committee, will go to the board in our July meeting for approval. And essentially what this would do is we have policies that are gonna go live July 1, that'll be active. These, whatever, 8 policies, 7 policies, they'll get changed on July 8th. Once the board, if the board votes to change them, they'll only be active for 7 days. July 13th, sorry, July 13th. All this moving district office and everything has me with the dates wrong. So policy 144.5 is all options selected. So when I say something like that, it means that there's nothing added in there. It's a Neola full boilerplate policy, right? And that particular policy has to do with board member behavior, communication, and code of conduct. So I looked at it with Dr. Thompson, I didn't have any additions.
I did have one question.
Yes,
When you say all options selected, so if there's nothing added in there, that means that there's nothing added in there. So when I say something like that, it means that there's nothing added in there. It means that it's a Neola full boilerplate policy, right? And that particular policy has to do with board member behavior, communication, and code of conduct. So I looked at it with Dr. Thompson, I didn't have any additions. and I may be reading this incorrectly. So
Yes.
when we get to the personal communication devices, so I think it's the third page of the
Yep.
policy.
Page 3, yep.
Yep, okay, so. Right, when using personal communication devices to communicate with students, board members must use district, blah, 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 okay. So this all governs that, then we get to appropriate content in the communication has to, appropriate content is content in the communication that fits into one of these categories.
Yep.
How does that layer in with, like, obviously, my kids are not old enough for cell phones, but for, say, Mr. Langer, or, you have a board member and they're communicating with their son's friend or, giving them a ride or something, like, is that,
It applies.
it applies, so like you're saying you can't text them to say, because it's not about anything school related, and it just says, or is that like, because then below it gets into like you communicate with families and things like that, so like, I'm gonna text a high schooler and say, because we have a few high schoolers that babysit for us.
Right,
So, right, I'm gonna text a high school student and say, can you, be at my house at this time to watch my daughter, whatever it may be. Is that outside of the scope of this, or how does that layer in?
okay, so first of all, it applies. That said, I think that would fall under letter C, safety and emergency communication. I mean, if it's, like you say, it's a student who's babysitting.
Yeah.
Anytime I had somebody, my kids are older now, but if they were babysitting, that's a safety thing.
I suppose, okay,
You have a child, you have someone doing that, I call that, in school, I'll use school terminology, police officers. We don't have them there because we know something's gonna happen. We have them there just in case of an emergency. And that's how I would look at that.
I'm not how I would have read it, but I can,
I look at a babysitter as safety. You have the babysitter there to make sure that your kids are gonna be okay.
Okay.
That they're not gonna, run outside, whatever,
Okay.
whatever.
Okay.
That's how I see it, that's how I would interpret it if I were a board member.
That looked like that.
Other questions? Good question.
that's the only thing I had on that one.
Okay. And so the next one is policy 1213, student supervision and welfare. Let me just get my things in order here. So this one, my notes were, this and the next one are companion policies. So policies 1213 and 3213, I reference these in my examples. So the next two policies, they're not the same, but they deal with different subgroups, administrators, and board members essentially on 1213, and then professional staff or staff members are 3213. So they're very similar policies. This and the next one are companion. Main takeaways is that hugging isn't allowed for the purpose of grooming. Hugging is allowed as long as none of the 6 things listed under what grooming are present. So let's flip to that.
Before we get to that, I just have a quick question. Is there a reason why we wouldn't include guardians? It's crossed out, so it says notify the parents or guardians, and or guardian is crossed out on
On what page?
the first page, like under required notification,
Oh,
timing. I guess I'm just curious why we would take that out.
registered sex offenders and.
Yeah, it just looks like we've struck every instance of guardians and limited to parents.
I think,
there's I'm thinking back to our drafting day, which is a few weeks
there might
back.
be a definition that covers.
In the earlier draft that says parent could include a legal guardian.
That would
Okay.
make sense.
We
Is
should-
that something that could be verified before we bring it, just to make sure
Sure.
we're inclusive of parent or legal guardian?
What I will ask, just to be clear with the committee, I'm gonna verify that if we strike guardian, parent is inclusive of legal guardian. Is that correct?
Yeah, if we have it defined that if thus forward, parent can refer to that, a legal parent or legal guardian, I'm fine with that.
Legal guardian. I will email Dr. Thompson and I'll get you the answer back on 1213, but also if it's on, I'll check both 3213 and 1213 because they are companion policies.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll do that check on both. Wanna jump to the 6 conditions for the grooming piece. And it's under page 2 of policy, the best place to look is page 2 of policy 3213. And I wanna be abundantly clear about this. This isn't my rule or my suggestion. This is the state of Wisconsin made this law. And we have to do this. But what they're saying is under, when I reference the 6 things, it's under A, grooming, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the next page. So it says, when accompanied by the intent described above, grooming behaviors include the following and other similar forms of interaction between school staff or volunteers or students. So when accompanied by the intent described above. So that's critical. When we were drafting that the intent of grooming is what they're saying, right? And this is part of the training that we'll have to do with staff and volunteers, administrators and everything. So then it goes into hugging, kissing, telling sexual jokes to students, not appropriate. Engaging in talking sexual innuendo or banter with students, not appropriate. Talking about sexual topics that are not related to the curriculum. Obviously we have human growth and development and things like that, we're not talking about that. 5, showing to or discussing pornography with a student, that would constitute grooming. Any other form of interaction with a student that involves the requisite intent described above. So I think that's pretty clear. I think it's clear that hugging is okay because that happens. I had a kid hug me today as I was, we were helping him find Lego.
Lego
Actually,
room.
You helped him find the Lego room, which is great, being in a school again, and the student needed to find the Lego room. And I had the student, he hugged me from the side, which is fine, and Mrs. Robleski got him to the Lego room, so thank you for doing that. So that sort of thing is still happening, hugging can happen, but this is an important thing that we'll have to train on. We don't have any choice in the matter, there's no drafting we can do here. I just wanted you to be aware of it, that if that comes up, we will be working on that with HR.
Is that kind of training the stuff you would ever work with CISA to deliver?
Not, maybe,
Yeah.
we could, usually Leah, through Human Resources, is gonna have either modules or specific trainings that she does herself or with her staff, usually at the start of the school year.
Okay.
When you have all these too many meetings at the start of the school year, these are some of those mundane things that we absolutely have to get done.
Okay.
This is one of those examples.
So our district will be ready to deliver that training.
We're ready to go.
Okay.
We're ready to go. It's gonna be a little bit of a lift, but that's why we're talking about it now, so we can get it approved on the 13th of July, thank you, and then roll it out to staff right after that question.
One just note is on page 2, you don't have the drafting note crossed off, but like everywhere else in the policy you do, so just
Yeah,
make
that'll-
note of, I don't know if we need to call that out or you guys will do the
Yep.
final touch. Okay,
Yeah, what after we do this meeting with policy committee, it'll go to the board, but then after the board approves it, it goes to, I'll call it the Neola cleaning process, where
Okay, so they pull those
they
notes.
eliminate drafting and
those notes,
and
okay,
all those notes. So
okay, perfect.
I put them here and I'll have them available for the regular board, cause it's good context.
Yeah, it's good context, and I see it's just crossed out everywhere else, so I
Yeah.
just didn't know if that was on us to take out or,
We'll make a note of that.
This is incredibly minor.
Yeah.
But since we are getting to and I'm looking at 1213.
Got it?
Since we are looking at district approved PCD communication platforms, since we are getting to the level,
What page?
I'm sorry,
5?
Page five, yes, thank you. Since we were getting to the level of individual pieces of software.
Yep.
We say district Gmail, do we need to say district Outlook or just district email?
So right now, this is so this is communication, approved communication with students. Students only have Gmail.
But what if they email, like they email us, I'm using Outlook.
Yep. We asked that in drafting. These are things that students use.
Gotcha, okay.
They don't use Outlook. That's just it's a nuance in this district. That is a good point, that I have both a Gmail and an Outlook, we all do,
Yes.
students do not.
Okay.
So good question. But those, I'm glad you referenced that, actually, if you just wanna stay on that for a second.
Because that does pop up in another policy.
It does, and these right here, under letter A on page 5, these are the only ways that staff can communicate with students. Gmail, PowerSchool, School Messenger, Class Dojo, because that's happening in the elementary now successfully, Schoology, and PowerTeacher.
So a staff would also use Gmail, a staff would use Outlook?
Well, the staff are using Outlook, but the students are using Gmail.
Okay.
The staff use both. Some staff only use Gmail. Like, actually, Mr. Halverson only uses Gmail.
Didn't notice that.
Some staff members,
Okay, that's, we
Yep,
don't need to belabor that, I just wanted to.
it's good. Okay, so we're gonna skip down to 7530.02, staff and school officials' use of personal communication devices. We took all the options, meaning it's 100% boilerplate, which I think when it comes to communication devices is important. So staff and school officials' use of personal communication device. A couple things it gets into, is district business using PCDs, text messages, instant messages, written communication. The text message that I do is very limited. I like email because it's easier for everybody to get. And I'm fine if there was just an open records cards today of my emails and they're public. I've almost thought of archiving them, but some people do that. I think that this is good, and I actually think keeping it boilerplate is important.
Yeah.
It's more of a legal update. Any questions about 7530.02? If not, we'll move to 03, which is student technology acceptable use and safety.
Which paper?
So in this one, it's listed here again. This is on page 3. District Gmail, PowerSchool, School Messenger, Class Dojo, Schoology, and PowerTeacher. So all of those are listed. Gmail, PowerSchool, and this has to do with the dangers inherent. In here, it was all boilerplate, took all options. Notice expectations for AI use as a Neola creation from input from districts. That's right, he wanted me to make you aware of the last paragraph. The last 2 paragraphs are brand new for all Neola clients. And I thought it was a really good ad because it jumps into AI, artificial intelligence. And it gets into that whole piece, which we already have policies for that we drafted. It talks about no bullying, harassing, threatening, impersonating, creating, or distributing deceptive or harmful content. With respect to AI, debates, etc., it gets into all of those details. It represents, it talks about policy 5505, which is academic honesty. So we're not getting to 5505 today, but we've already pre-drafted it. We do have an academic honesty policy, which this crosses with. So earlier, when we were just talking generally about policies, this is the trickle effect of policies. This policy is created, it references academic honesty, and that's how it crosses over. So unauthorized use of artificial intelligence is on the back page to generate or complete academic work shall constitute a violation of district policy on academic honesty. And this is huge, this is big stuff, this didn't exist as a Neola template a year or two ago. So it's brand new stuff, but we need it. And we have new AI policies of our own coming forward that have been vetted through Neola, so this is brand new with a lot of legal citations.
Do we, I mean, obviously I know at the beginning of school year, you have to sign all the handbooks and things like that, but something like academic honesty,
Yeah.
proper use of AI, do we like teach students on that so they have an understanding? Okay.
Yep, it's part of the, I know it's part of the homeroom at the high school
Okay.
and the middle school. And I'd have to get more information about what that looks like at the elementary school. Yeah,
I know they're not in
you'd be surprised.
second grade, but
I know that in the college level, at least according to I only have one child left in college, one more year to go. ChatGPT and Gemini and all that sort of stuff, it is a problem at that level. And not with my daughter, at least, God forbid. But, the whole academic, is it your material? That sort of thing, it's real important. When I write something for a bulletin or something like that, the extent of my use is Grammarly, which is kind of AI, at the same, but some people are full, Gemini or ChatGPT. I just can't do that, Maybe that's for younger generation.
No, I think it's good. I think the thing I don't think it would cause problems, and I don't think it's worth editing because I imagine this may change.
Oh, yeah.
But disclosing the extent of AI assistance would be hard to quantify that.
We
So it's
actually,
somewhat meaningless, but sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, that was my only read of like, well, I can say, yes, I used AI, well, how much did you use it?
So we're gonna be rolling out a new AI policy. We're working with our librarians and Katie Welke as the lead on that, to help identify that with, no use, limited use, there's like a code
Some
system.
criteria on that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
perfect.
we've done some minimal rollout with staff on that, we did this last year, a lot of education with our staff. But that'll be coming out to students, just like you're saying, and that's the education on it. Pewaukee is a real leader on this, because they've been on it for a couple years, Dr. Katie over there and his staff. So we've kind of modeled what we're doing after that model. A lot of people are looking at Pewaukee, they presented on the state and maybe even national level, I know they're presented at the state level. So when they're right around, they're one of our neighbors, and like I said, we have a team working on that, we've done some limited rollout, but there's gonna be more with students here coming in this new year. We wanted to focus on staff with AI, and now we're pushing it further out. There's no more questions, I'll jump to 7544, use of social media. No communication allowed privately with individual students on social media. See the list, 7540.03. We've kind of already talked about the list. That is acceptable. It's a comprehensive and reference in this policy for the means of communication with students. If it's not in this list, it's not. So, and meaning it's not in accordance with policy. If we can always add something in, if there's a desire or people push back, or they're gonna add things in, but there's reasons that's there, and no Facebook friending students.
Is there a reason, so on the first page, we have the struck out paragraph.
Yep.
Is there a reason that the line above that and the paragraph above that are not also struck?
Mean the communication platforms?
Yes, because this is saying, right,
Yep,
if you are charged with saying what platforms we can use, we're saying we can't use any platforms.
Yep, I remember this, I have a note here that we have to have that listed there because we have to list them on our website. We have to make this clear on our website, the communication platform shall be listed on the district's website. That's a legal requirement.
Okay, I see, so that one line, these communication platforms is of all the communication platforms. So what about the paragraph above that where it says the district administrator is charged with designating the approved social media? So, okay, so that's, social media essentially is 0 and then /sites is Power School and everything.
What's listed here.
Gotcha, okay, because we were in the social media policy, I read that as
Yep, it's saying that I'm
100% social
responsible,
media.
which is why I'm being scripted about it. And I reached out multiple times, to Mr. Halverson, Mr. D'Amato, and I'm like, I'm gonna ask you again, like, give me the list. I need the whole list so that it's in here. Not because I'm trying to be difficult, because I'm trying to stay in compliance with a very important, Act 89. It's connected to Act 89. Everything we're doing here is connected to Act 89. Which is another thing that I like about Neola. You'll see things that are structured in this way, and all of these policies are touching on that one big law, Act 89. Any other questions about social media? All right, a couple more to go. Volunteers. I put Leah's name here, and she knows her name is there because this is going to be a little bit of a lift. But we're ready, and she's ready to go, and this is why we have summer to get ready for this. Now, it's not a long policy, but essentially what it says is all volunteers are to be trained in these new Act 89 laws and rules. That's the gist of this 2-page policy.
So this is saying that like someone volunteers to be a chaperone on a field trip or
Yes.
volunteer to help at a school party. Okay,
Yep.
that is a large lift.
It's a lift.
Okay.
And we looked at this, we asked questions about it, and it's not my law. So
Yeah. No, I just,
they can be mad at me, I take responsibility for it, we have to do this. But
Yeah.
we'll be ready, we'll have a system and a protocol in place for volunteers by the start of school.
I'm not saying it's bad to have this, I
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify the level of
Yeah.
volunteer because yes, that is
Leah asked the
a
same.
lot.
Leah asked the same question. She goes, "Are you serious? Let me read that." And so I gave it to her and I said, "Go for it, read it." And she did, and I'm like, of course, that I didn't write this, because look, it's stamped Neola only.
Yeah.
Only Neola, so I wasn't just messing with her.
And can you clarify, and obviously board members are called out in this volunteer one, but even if say a board member wasn't volunteer for the first part of the year, like, will this get sent out to all district employees, including board members, to complete this training every year automatically?
This is about volunteers, so you're asking a different question about a different policy.
Yes.
So, yes,
Okay, because I know sometimes there's a difference between staff and board members.
yes,
But
So-
this would seem like something that would be good just to ensure that everyone that is regularly amongst our students in school has the training documented.
likely it's gonna be a lot of the compliance pieces that Leah puts together in a very systematic and effective way. Either she or her staff are together, is at the start of the year, every staff member is gonna get, 2.5 hours worth of, bloodborne pathogens and,
Yeah.
it's wet and it's not yours, don't touch it. And you go through the list and very important things to review, and this will probably be an add-on to that lift.
And I imagine in the third paragraph where it says like anyone volunteering must submit to criminal records and background check. Our normal background check process already is inclusive of that, okay,
Yep, we still have the Raptor background checks.
okay.
Just like every one of the construction workers, because this was an active school. On that same way, we were already doing this, that every worker that walked in here got Raptor before they stepped into the school. And little inconvenience, slowed things down a little bit, but that's just the world we live in.
Yeah, no, the safety measure.
Yeah,
is important.
absolutely. And the last 8462, reporting of child abuse, neglect, and sexual misconduct. This is a rename policy and required notification language. This talks about staff training, there we go, I knew it was coming. The board shall require every employee to receive training provided by the DPI in identifying children who have been abused or neglected, and the laws and procedures governing the reporting of suspected threatening of child abuse. We'll take care of that through the HR. So when it says the board, it means me and or Leah subsequently. So this is a piece, there's other pieces that we've already kind of glossed over that are specific for me. I'll just broadly reference it, meaning the superintendent or district administrator. I have X amount of time, once I'm aware of something, to report it. And if I know before noon, and it's very scripted for me. So this isn't just tough on, this up and downs. But it's critical things and we'll get it done. And that's the policy update. So those are the policies that will be going to the board. And I will get the questions. The main question I had for Dr. Thompson, verifying that if we on 1213 and 3213, verification that if we strike guardian, that parent is inclusive of legal guardian.
Yeah, and 8462 also on the back page has guardian crossed out, so just a note on.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's a,
I'm guessing there is, otherwise it would be unusual to remove.
I will have the question to Dr. Thompson tonight. And we'll make sure to be ready with that for the board meeting. Whatever it is, even if I need to add something in or
Yeah.
whatever, we'll reference this policy meeting and they'll be pre-drafted and have a double check from this committee. All right, so in terms of what's coming to the board, that's the extent of it, those policies. Unless we get to the other policies and there's suggestions there, but that's last on the agenda. We'll jump to 35-1 AGs, if that's okay?
Yeah.
All right, so the AGs, these are a lot of money pieces. So Caitlin, some of you might have saw her, she stopped in and asked if she needed to stay in. I'm like, I think you're fine, we pre-drafted, these are pretty straightforward AGs, but we'll walk through them and once again, they give a nice overview. I wanna reference that because it's a good way to pull it out and to have a centering point for you. The update, or not the update, the overview of comments and student support organizations. So all the AGs are listed in there with what it is. And those comments are mostly from Neola. If they're from me, I'll have a little note in there if they're from me. But essentially, it's giving you a cliff notes, if you will, so that you have a centering point and it's just a little easier to keep things consolidated. Selection of 31 AG, 2521A. So we'll start with, are we starting with 2521A?
Okay, wait, so we've already done the 35-1
Yep.
AGs. Okay, just wanna make sure we did that, okay.
Yep, we did. So 2521A is the first AG, and I believe, I don't have a note next to this, but I did have a note to pull it up. This is a policy about selection of supplemental educational materials. I just had to note to put this in there. This is drafted, this is a NOAA policy somewhat, mostly a school district of Menominee Falls policy vetted by legal counsel. So I don't have any recommendations here other than book looks has been taken out of this.
Can you just clarify for there's obviously a lot of links here.
Yeah,
I was slightly confused about 2521 being in this section.
yeah, it was,
Was there a Neola update to their
No.
template or this?
No.
Okay,
this had to do with a legal. This had to do with a DPI request.
but I thought we had previously,
We
last year when we were drafting, we had removed.
I just wanted to make it public that it's done,
Oh, okay,
that it's not on
So that's why that's,
gotcha,
So
okay.
So it's
it's
still-
there because I needed to make it public that that's actually
I
not
see.
there.
Gotcha, okay,
As part of an email that'll be sent next week or this week, not by me, but by legal counsel to finish that situation.
perfect, okay.
Okay, so if there's no other questions about that, we'll jump into the Neola updates. Let me just get organized with my sheets, just one second. 2521, so we're gonna go to 5830, student fundraising. So these are SSO all core updates, so these are recommendations from Neola. And essentially what they're doing is they're updating their own updates. in this AG. So we'd already drafted these things, and the crossouts, those are things that we did and Caitlin selected, but Neola is saying, okay, we need to change that based on, SSO is student support organizations, that's what SSO is. So like Junior Phoenix, or there's lots, like Booster Club, you know, there's lots of them. So this is recommended by Neola, no changes by me. Yep.
Ask in F, right, so 5830, first page, F,
First page.
we go, each fundraising activity must be approved by the principal if occurring on board premises.
Yep.
But above we talked, in B it talks about district premises.
Yeah, they made the distinction because of the board's, the money authority. Yeah,
We want those the same though?
I am confused what the difference between board premises and district premises are within the same, I mean, I guess in general, but also within the same policy. Like district is obviously intentionally struck.
right,
And I understand that it is, well, obviously we struck it, but it is board policy.
right.
What is, I don't know that I've ever seen the term board premises before.
We can ask, but it was my understanding from drafting that while you're elected board members, you know, obviously we're handling, you know, the day-to-day of the property and all that. But ultimately, you're directly responsible for it. But we
But then
can
shouldn't-
ask,
Yes, it then shouldn't B match.
yeah, let me, so that's B and F,
I don't know. That was where I first, it may be,
board.
But there is something in D that says board property
So
also.
where it says district premises and board premises, why different?
and then yes, D does say board property. So maybe that is the correct term, just
What I'll do is, what I'm guessing is they probably missed letter B and it should say board premises.
Okay.
Just based on my recollection from drafting. Let me get the answer for you and I'll make sure to have it clarified.
and then M says district premises.
Yep. Now for the AGs, for the AG questions, I'm just gonna email the three of you the answers to those questions, because they're not coming to the board.
Yep.
And if there's questions at all based on the email, please, you know, email call. All right, and I'll probably have that by the end of the week. All right, so crowdfunding is next, 6605, and consult legal. Okay, this is the one where, and I'll make a note to do that, consult legal. What we're consulting legal about, it's actually in the draft, I left the drafting note in there. If you flip to, yeah, it's actually crossed out, that's why I like leaving the crossouts there. The very bottom of it, note districts should consult with their legal counsel to determine whether they are obligated to register and or file annual reports with state or federal authorities based on staff members conducting crowdfunding campaigns. So that's something that I'll work on with Caitlin. Is to, and essentially, if there's crowdfunding or there's something going on like that out there, what they're saying is, it's possible that in your area, it might be a requirement that whatever annual, that be identified and that the board has knowledge of it officially at a public board meeting.
Okay.
We're gonna find that out. You know,
Okay.
We'll consult legal on that. And I'll put that in my email about the AGs, which will be separate, so we don't confuse those things. Okay, so that's crowdfunding, 6611, SSO Student Activity Fund. To me, I put wordsmithing, because I think that's what it was. I would call it a technical correction, which to that and to me, it was wordsmithing. That's more Munoz speak, so other people have different words for it, I think. And if I say public gifts to district, which is 7230, core updates, this is what was recommended, which is striking the last sentence, K, which is be in conflict with any provision of the general school laws or public laws.
Why is this one co-branded?
This was, Caitlin had some,
There's also, Dr. Thompson added, there's a link that's now added into this AG on our public site, so you could go there right now and look. The link is in there so that when people make donations, it's all documented. So that may be playing into it because we now have our own.
Oh.
yeah, Caitlin liked our existing gifts to the district policies and procedures, so we just brought those over. This is an example of one of the 5% that just make a lot of sense,
I think I remember that.
right?
Yeah.
Like we were talking about, there's just some things that we do with auditing and how we take in gifts and these sorts of things. Like right now, we're working on a 6-figure gift that I've sort of referenced that is probably, we'll know one way or the other by the board meeting, which would be just amazing. And that will, but it has to do with these sorts of things, where she has set processes in place, it works for us, it's vetted by legal outside of Neola, and we leave it in policy, so that's what it is. But that isn't, they're still vetting it, Neola's still vetting their language, and that's why they're pulling out the one word. Okay, so that's 70, that's, I don't wanna miss any. So now we're on to 754005, and that's assistive technology services, and I put technical correction, which is probably the same as wordsmithing and Munoz speak.
Just the, I don't see any strikeouts or changes
It's
outside
at
of
the
year.
bottom, 2020 to 2025.
Okay, yeah, okay, so it is just the year, okay.
That's what I see. They're essentially saying, Neola, that they've looked at it, they've vetted it, and they've not made any changes. Next is 8310, which is, had to change this AG because of how we wrote the policy. So the policy 8310 was written for public records. We made some selections, and because of those selections, we had to change the AG. It's still boilerplate, meaning it's full Neola, not at all school district. But because of decisions we made with the policy, then there's a trickle effect to the AG.
So this is something we just missed on our first go through, or?
We didn't miss it, it's just the policies aren't going active till July 1. So the board approved the policies, not the AGs, when we did those approvals at the board.
Sure.
So the AGs are sort of just floating still.
Okay.
So it's really just striking out that it's 8310, not
Yeah.
8310A.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes.
And it took me a while to find where
I thought you were, because I had it went by your note, I
Yes.
thought you were suggesting that the AG that we went through with the spring, that like we made an incorrect selection
Oh, no.
related to our policy flow.
So what we did is, sorry, I need it for the, so what we did with the policy is we changed the policy from 8310A to 8310. So then the subsequent AG had to eliminate the A. So,
Nope,
sorry.
I spent more time than I would like to admit trying to figure out
That was,
what we're doing.
that was my lack of clarity there, but I think we got it now. Sorry about that. 8310C is a delete because it's all in 8310.
Okay,
So we're deleting that because we don't need it anymore. 8400A, same sort of thing, we're removing this as it's in our plan already and it's outdated. Was relevant in the past, but it is no longer relevant.
when you
So
say
threat assessment intervention is important. We already have it identified in other policies, mostly policies, actually.
rather than an AG.
Like threat assessment. So we're eliminating because it's just not relevant anymore. And these forms coming over, there's two different forms listed there, request for a program curriculum modification. The way Neola works is, these are Neola forms now. This is a Neola template form, but the forms themselves are AGs, not in policy. In our previous way, at least for a couple more days, of policies, we sort of just linked in forms everywhere. So forms now are strictly AGs. So this is a request for program curriculum modification. Any student or parent the parent is notified may submit a written request to the board to provide the student with program or curriculum modifications. Then it goes into work study programs. I'll give an example. This is something, I'm an 18-year high school principal. I'll simplify this. There's a lot of examples where there's an alternative or a curriculum modification. One would be Quest. So Quest is an example of a modification, an alternative school modification. That is exactly what this is talking about. So that's an example. There's other examples, but that's the easiest one to get. So that's the one most commonly dealt with, but there are others. I mean, through IEPs.
So
usually-
someone, so if someone had an IEP, they'd also have to do this?
It
rather than
depends.
just- it
It
would just
depends
depend,
on what
okay.
the IEP says.
Okay.
So not in
Okay.
every instance,
Okay, I was gonna say,
But
oh my
it's-
goodness,
no, not
Okay,
at
thank you.
all.
thank you.
Not in every instance, but it
There
depends.
could be, there could be a scenario. Okay,
There are some that are,
okay,
because there's other alternative education options that are not Quest
I follow.
that we pay for, that are in other parts of the county and state,
Okay,
okay?
sounds good.
Unmanned aircraft systems, this is an important form, this came up a couple different times. We actually have a drone footage today of the new DO front, which we're almost done with. So I like the Neola template, I think it's straightforward. Unmanned aircraft system authorization form, it goes through that this is the process for doing this, if you're gonna do it. Like we have given permission to Chris from Falls Cable Access to do drone footage because he does it for graduation every year and he, helps us in that venue, so that's an example.
So, and we have 7440
Yes,
okay, cause I remember we struck something about drones out when we were drafting, but I think that was because that state law was,
yes,
okay, so what's above this is all in place.
yes.
Okay, and then,
This is just the AG.
okay, and then, like you said, Falls Cable Access, and I saw the BGS guy out there with the drone, so they're all aware that
Yep.
2 weeks from now, they need to have this all on file.
I gave them both specific permission, and then Chris, they'll actually be here on Monday. So we'll deal with that on Monday, so we have a taping right in front with John McCure, but yes, absolutely, yes.
Do we,
How is this, how's this enforceable?
Well,
I mean, what if somebody, say, doesn't complete the form?
we only have so much authority with John. We have authority over students and staff. We only have so much authority over, community members or just anybody?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can call the authorities and make them aware of our rules and then perhaps there's enforcement or municipal enforcement in that sort of realm.
Okay.
But when you cross the line away from where authority exists, like someone could be flying a drone and not being on district property.
Right.
So then their property's on district property, but they physically aren't. So the law, American public school law is very interesting that way. So if people park their car, let's use a car as an example. That if somebody parks their car right out here, the new district office lot, Ben Franklin, they're on district property.
Right.
So actually, regardless of them being adults or students or board members or not, their vehicle's on district property, so the laws are very different. It's reasonable suspicion, not probable cause. So there's a weaker Fourth Amendment. So you know, you only, in other words, you don't even need plain sight and view anymore if you're on district property. Now, that's going really deep on this, but it's very specific. Now, if the person is on district property, then district rules apply. But if they're physically not, those are two different situations.
Interesting. What's the main reason for having a policy like this? Is it related to safety or privacy of students?
Both safety, privacy. I mean, there's students that we have listed that don't, you know, when we have Chris from Falls Cable access to his wonderful drone footage, he's not taking any pictures of students.
Right.
You know, he's taking pictures of our roofs and our fronts and, you know, he's doing a graduation picture and all you see is hats thrown in the air and, you know, that kind of thing. So it's privacy, it's, you know, someone being able to have a drone and being able to see into a classroom, that's not okay.
Sure.
You know,
Okay.
those sorts of things. It'd be the equivalent of somebody walking with a cell phone and saying, I'm just gonna record wherever I go, and you can't.
Right.
Now there's students and other people's privacy and IEPs and sensitive situations, and it's not that I don't respect the First Amendment or all the amendments of the Constitution, but in the school setting, the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, is out front, obviously HIPAA, if it's medical, because we have that as well, with students' health, privacy, and safety. So, does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, and that is all the updates for policies and AGs. So AGs, I will get you those answers back and shoot you an email. I'm just keeping my school support organizations organized here. Updates and overviews for 35-1. So we'll be fully up to date and get everything sent out. So just to be clear one more time, is the only thing coming to the board are the policies.
Right.
So any policies, which we'll vote on when it comes to action, we're only voting on the policies. And that'll be all that comes to the board. All right. And I think we're down to letter D.
I think so.
All right, so the other policies, I have kind of sort of followed the same sort of organization and links. So you guys have all those links, and we'll pull those over to the public right after this meeting. Just so everybody can see that, we'll pull it over. Just so it's all in the same organized way. So when you look at it digitally, I put up there currently Neola based, but largely the same homegrown policies as prior years with a supplemental educational materials selection. I just organized it 25-21, and then I put the AGs, because this was sort of a general overview. Then I put the boilerplate Neola policy for supplemental educational materials, which I think I had sent earlier. Currently Neola based, then jumping down to library and media centers, 25-22, along with AGs for 25-22, plus the boilerplate. And just reminding the committee again that the boilerplates weren't selected, but they're there. They're draftable, if that's what you choose to do. Number 3, the current Neola based, but largely the same homegrown policies as prior years for public requests, suggestions, or complaints. So if there's a request from the community or suggestions or complaints, we already have policies and procedures for that. Now, in that particular case, it's a lot more scripted. You can see a lot more going on there with policies and procedures. Those are all mostly all homegrown policies. One thing we found out in our drafting, and this for the 2 new board members, is that before me, I want to be very clear about what I'm about to say, that a lot of this information in 9130 and 2522 and 2521A was largely thought, even by me, until we started drafting and working with Neola, to be 100% created here sort of policies. But what was found out in our drafting process is a lot of it was already Neola. Somebody before me, not me, had used, because they're out there, you can go to other districts and see the policies.
Sure.
Had grabbed old Neola policies and used them to essentially hodgepodge and create these policies. So in our process of drafting, you know, Thompson was like, well, here are the templates, and here's what, you know, we just went and carried over the work that was already done. There's not a lot of adjustments here, it's mostly just existing policies renumbered. So these are existing policies in 1, 2, and 3 that were renumbered to be consistent with Neola policy numbering. But they're largely homegrown policies. I wanted to put the boilerplates in there to kind of help with one of Steve's earlier questions. Is there a way and access to more policies than what we have available here? Yeah, those boilerplates are 3 examples.
Okay.
They're not selected, but you can see a lot of common language in there about public requests, suggestions, or complaints, student use of library and media centers, and supplemental educational materials. So there's already quite a bit of work there by Neola in all of that area. So that's really all I have for that. You know, unless there's questions or suggestions about what.
So I just wanna triple check that I understand.
Yes,
this. So for one, these first 2 are in effect, but we didn't choose boilerplate, is that correct?
yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
Yep, that is.
because I think I had all the papers out.
When I was organizing it, I wanted it to be clear that policy 2521 under number 1 is currently selected to go live July 1. The AG is, we've already talked about, is selected to go live July 1. Same thing with number 2, the first 2 that are lighter colored blue, those have been selected and redrafted and are ready to go, with the boilerplate not selected underneath for 2522. Now for public requests, suggestions, or complaints, you can see that over the years, and I've looked back, and this is like a multi-year, even before me process, like most of these policies, if not all of them, were originated before I came on board. They were adjusted somewhat, a few of them since I came on board, but for the most part, these were created 4 to 5 years ago and have persevered, have been vetted by legal counsel and that sort of thing. But everything listed there is ready to go, live on July 1. That's the light colored piece. I put the boilerplate policy at the bottom to be fully transparent. When it says boilerplate, that's not selected. Those are just available because there was a request from at least one board member, but I think more, about the boilerplate. So I just wanted to have that out there. Yes, they're there. But they were not selected. We didn't draft off the boilerplates. Does that help?
I think 2522 is a good, like you just said, is a really good example to see, like, the one that says active library media centers is obviously very similar to Neola. It's co-branded because it is so close to Neola. I think that was I don't know if you just said that or just something we've talked about before, like, we were so close that when we did our first work with Neola, they're like, oh, well, since you kind of copied us already, like, we'll co-brand it and not sue you for copyright. But then you can go to the boilerplate and see all of the options. I believe you can also, if you go back in, obviously it won't be the most up-to-date, but there's only a year old, so it should be pretty up-to-date. If you go into board docs and go into old policy meetings from last year, you should be able to see all of the selections that were made. I don't know if it's in the public or the executive content of all the individual strike-throughs. So obviously, Dr. Thompson turns around things very quickly, so if you want something specific, it might just be easier, but if you're going down rabbit hole some night, you could probably find whatever boilerplate somewhere in there.
Yeah, or other districts, so one of the things about all of this, and we'll throw it on I just wanted to get to the policy meeting and make sure that the policy committee had time for questions and any sort of vetting or, conversations or discussion about all of these. I do wanna reference the email from Dr. Thompson, I think he sent it yesterday, June 18th, Thursday, June 18th. So I had talked to him about policy proposals and suggestions. And you can see him on the bottom there. So he says, thanks for reaching out. It sounds like a prudent approach to prioritize July 1 update before taking on new community proposals. Getting that first update successfully under the belt is an excellent goal. As the board considers potential modifications to your local policies, I would offer to points for consideration. He's not telling you have to do this, he's just given some policy list. Policies are highly interconnected. Modifying one area can create ripple effects across the related policies and administrative guidelines. In this instance, books for consideration typically touches several other sections of your manual. So jumping into that, very doable, but it's and it's doable in not too long of a time, but not in an overnight fashion if that's the decision of the board or the committee and subsequently the board. Additionally, I recall that your local book selection reconsideration policies were vetted by your school board's legal counsel, which is true, rather than being standard Neola templates. These are telling correctly. Because these are locally vetted custom documents, should the board choose to deviate from the existing language that's already vetted, is what he means. I strongly recommend that any new language be reviewed by your legal counsel to ensure consistency and compliance. So essentially, he's saying nicely, if you're not gonna use our boilerplate,
Get a lawyer.
make sure that you use a lawyer to make sure that all those trickle effects and things that they can't check for because it's not their boilerplate, that were covered. So he's recommending caution. Should you decide to move, of course, he says, to the Neola template for this topic, I would gladly work with your leadership team, of course he will. And that's just Dr. Thompson, me, Dr. Thompson, he's a good dude. I'm happy to discuss this further if it would be helpful. So he followed up just based on a message that I had reached out to him about this.
And I just,
Okay, sorry, no, that's all I got, that's all I have.
I was just gonna say, so obviously, as we, for D, that we are in, for discussion items, there is action on there. The action, I think, I shouldn't say think, it is written very, essentially written, the recommended action is maybe a bit misleading in this situation, that it's written as broadly as possible, right? Because I think between various board member conversations, all of these have been talked about as boilerplate, change them, go back to whatever. And it felt silly to write an agenda that says recommended action table, right? My thought is that we have this all of the last year's work will go live on July 1. So that recommended action to go to all Neola boilerplate and what we're discussing here, I would recommend that when we get to the action of B, that we table it or elect to do nothing, however the motion wants to be worded, because most of these policies have had significant, I shouldn't say significant changes, because some are very similar, but some, and I'm going to mix up my numbers here, I think it was 25, 21, right? We significantly changed the process with regards to, instead of the curriculum committee making the final decision on books, it goes to the full board, right? So like, it is still a custom policy. We are not Neola boilerplate. If both of you felt very strongly, we obviously could move in that direction, but we did make significant changes that aren't even technically live yet. So I think there's value in some period of stability and at least getting live what we worked through before changes are made before we get to, because I think that also gets really weird if you try to make changes in the 7 days before you get to a new policy book.
Because it's a discussion item, I feel like I can
Yes,
discuss all of these
100% still in
policies.
discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay, I mean, I understand these policies go live, and I also know, policies take time. I think these specific policies that are brought to the agenda have been a topic of significant interest in our community. I don't think that's, unfair to say, and I will say I've had a lot of, over the past 6 months, whether I was a board member or not, I've had interest in this topic emailed to me. I know it was in public discussion. I know a lot has been discussed over the last 6 months when I was meeting with community members. I do think, I'm not trying to discount the work, and I do think where the policy has gotten to a better place than it was. One thing that I would look to or look for clarification from Neola, because I think there is value of having something protected by Neola. One thing that I see is like in the reconsideration and things like that. Reconsideration seems to be defined strictly as removing something. Is that correct? Or is there possibility of when you are looking at some of that reconsideration wording, we could have it go in both directions, that we could have, I know we'd have to adapt the wording, but it could be brought forward by a community member, a teacher of, hey, maybe something that was done in the past, can it be reconsidered? Maybe we have it looked at by our educational professionals of, should it be reconsidered to be brought into the library, et cetera.
I'm gonna simplify my response.
Okay.
That the board can do as it chooses with the board majority.
Yeah.
And the previous board majority did as it chose.
Yeah.
And that was within their right to do. And it's within your right to do otherwise if you choose to. That's as simple as it comes to consideration. Because certain board members made a decision about a book. And it ended at committee. I mean, that was a decision,
Yeah, and that was the policy at the time.
yes. That policy's changed now.
Changed.
And I think in a good way, that, we put a lot of work into changing it so that the full board had that vote. So that said, and I'm gonna use Aaliyah-ism a little bit, and I thought it was a really apt one, I think she said it at the last board meeting, that, if in 10 years, if there's a different board, then they can do differently.
Yeah.
3 years ago, there was a different board, they did differently. I mean, really it's reconsideration, when it comes right down to it, there's a process, there's a protocol. We try to handle things as much as you can before it escalates and all of these sorts of things. You can put all the procedures in place that you want, but who's making the decision is what people are gonna be either happy or mad about.
We're not wrong on that.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to oversimplify or to be condescending or to make light of a subject, but
Yeah.
that's the reality. Is that we're in. And to me, it's Mr. Kramer and I had, a lot of conversation back and forth about these topics, and the gist of it is that the board can do as it chooses to, and it's my job to action those things.
Yeah.
In whatever direction we go. So, I think before we get into the fine points of everything, that matters.
I think also to your question and probably leading into E here, maybe getting ahead of ourselves.
Yep.
Okay.
I think they're connected.
They are connected, but I think, so like Gary, if you read the Neola boilerplate, where are we at, I keep getting 21 and 22, 25, 22. If you read option 3, that could work either way and be Neola. So right, if that is a direction we decide to go,
25, 22?
25, 22, the
Option
policy option 3, right? So that to me reads very neutrally of
Yeah,
books,
yeah.
right? So like, And I think that's a good, again, to tie it back to the beginning, like Neola has a policy for almost everything or an option for almost everything that you want to do that is cheaper and faster than building something from scratch.
I personally have liked the Neola policies and there is safety in it, that there's that protections. The one thing that I'm not clear about is, so the forms that we have of like if someone does want to reconsider a material, was that a homegrown form or is there Neola templates for that as well?
No, it's homegrown.
And but there isn't any like boilerplate templates, we would still have to homegrown that form.
I'd have to check on that.
Well,
Okay,
I think it's, basically, it's telling you, here's what you need to include in, like, basically,
in the form.
in, like, right, put
Yeah.
your request in writing and include this, so.
So essentially,
Make your
this is in some of our conversation with Mr. Kramer and myself, was that when it got to 9130, 9130-01, 02, all of these public requests and suggestions for complaints, actually everything on this page, there was a lot of policies and procedures procedures merged into policies. And what we found in our drafting is that policies were part of procedures and were made part of policy and vice versa. There was this I just hodgepodge, the best way to look at it, when we were going through drafting, we found it. I'm not saying it's bad.
Yeah.
But some had looked at policy or procedure and said, well, I want that to be policy now. Okay, like, fine.
Yeah.
And they wanted forms that were referenced in policy or referenced in procedures, and then they wanted their form to be a certain way. So
I think another good example is, just what you just said, is 9130.
Yep.
Basically says, follow the procedure.
Yeah.
But now because AGs are extremely malleable without a board vote, like we have this very detailed AG, but I think in Neola boilerplate, it is all in policy.
exactly, yes, that's a good example, that the Neola boilerplate for 9130, if you'll, like, just like Mr. Kramer was saying, they pushed pretty hard on getting it into policy.
Their
And
policy
getting-
is significantly longer.
It's significantly longer because essentially what they're doing is what we're about to go live with, you know,
They would
a lot
take
of
out this
the, a
whole
lot of the boilerplate is in policy. Or a lot of what we have spread out currently in multiple different spots. Like, for example, when we create 9130.01, that's not a Neola number. When Thompson sat on the phone with me and said, well, we're gonna create 9130.01 because that's your thing. 9130, public requests and suggestions or complaints, is the template. So he just said, okay, so you're doing this with challenges to library materials. We'll call that .02, right? So same thing with 9130.02. I mean, and the exhibits. Well, we'll call that 02/exhibit. And he was being systematic for us in numbering so that it's aligned to loosely like a Neola, yeah.
I don't feel like we have these policies ready for any type of vote, but I would support us having a future meeting where we can really dig deep. I think the supplemental one, I would love some input from the curriculum and instruction team. One thing I'm curious of for that supplemental, do we have a stat of, because I know if it's beyond like what, 2 class periods, it has to get building principal approval or various other approvals. Do we have a stat of like, of what's submitted, how many of those get denied?
I'd have to look into that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have it, but I'm just curious, is the 2 class periods the right?
Before we go down because,
The two
I hear-
class periods is new though.
Yeah, I know that's new.
Okay,
so either we're.
oh, I see, sorry.
And we can certainly set policy meeting anytime to look at existing policies?
Mhm.
Or is the committee asking me to redraft from boilerplate? I guess, I mean, obviously, we're not ready for a vote today, but I wanted to,
No, and I
Put everything-
appreciate you sharing.
I wanted to put everything on the table
Mhm.
to say that I just need to know what
you wanna do.
we're doing. And I'll, the letter from Dr. Thompson, the email, he's ready.
He's ready.
He's
yes.
ready to draft boilerplate. But if you want us to look at these existing policies, not the boilerplate, okay,
I mean, I don't need to be the only one talking, I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on these 3 policies.
so then either I'm gonna redraft existing policies in AGs, or I'm gonna redraft boilerplate, is really what we're
Yeah.
discussing. And I'm fine with either. We're ready to go.
Yeah.
With everything that's not boilerplate.
And I think also just keeping in mind that there are supplemental and library media are similar but not the
They
same.
are not, no.
And
There's different laws that govern
Yeah,
each.
and then sorry, getting lost in the numbers here.
Yep.
Yes, sorry, that's just what I wanted to call it. It was the supplemental versus the library is different. So you're 25-21 versus 25-21 versus 25-22 versus the supplemental that is
91.
Or reconsideration, 9130.
91-30.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
So they are all
No, I know, they're all,
they're all re-looking at they all could look at a book, but it is books in different places that have different legal protections.
Yes, yep.
Because of they are in the library, they're in a supplemental traveling library that is not governed by
yeah,
the school's library, or it is something that a book or a piece of paper or a worksheet that a teacher wants to bring in.
yeah, when I'm
So just to
saying,
call out that it's,
when I'm saying supplemental, I mean like what they would bring into the classroom, because
Sure.
that's how I understand that
Okay.
policy is, it's not library books. I'm just curious, cause I know it takes a lot of extra work, to do that, and so I just wanna make sure if that is how we wanna keep it, do we also have the support time and resources for teachers to properly execute those policies?
That was all vetted, to answer one question at a time. Yes, curriculum was involved in drafting these and preparing these.
Yeah.
You know. Do we have systems and protocols in place for all this? Yes. I'm fine doing
Yeah, I
whatever
know
the
you're fine
committee-
doing whatever we.
what committee
we
chooses to do, but we have these ready to go. It's just a matter of, am I gonna be drafting on existing policies or the boilerplate? Is what I'm generally asking. And you know,
I think if I recall, there was, we were talking about 25-21.
Yep.
Is what, so teachers selecting materials they wanna bring in. I think the example I brought up before that wasn't really covered before, was something like a political cartoon from like the 1920s, like the heyday of the political cartoons. So both of the worksheets previously called out books, and there really wasn't, it was confusing if you were a teacher because you were told to use this worksheet, but the worksheet specifically asked you about what book you were bringing in, so that didn't make any sense. So I think we fixed that, we also made it electronic.
Yeah.
I've heard some feedback that still they would like, when I say they, I mean educators would like more flexibility and maybe the 2 days is too restrictive. I'm inclined to say if a change was made, can we give it a quarter?
Time to play out.
Right, and like, can we see what can we see if this works, or, you know, instead of making a change and then
Okay.
before we try the change again. And maybe it is still too restrictive and maybe it still needs
Yeah, I
to be
mean,
looser, but we did, and if you ask me exactly what we changed, I'm not gonna remember, but we did give them the, I think like the 2 days, like before it was if you wanna use anything at all, you would submit the
Yeah.
form.
no, it's too,
And
yeah,
then if you're using it for, right, if you're bringing it in for a class or two, right, and you want to talk about something, then fine, like do it, and that's your professional judgment, so.
yeah, I just wanna, and I'm not opposed to letting it play out, and I know one nuance that we have to consider this is we wanna balance putting trust into our educators who we hire their expertise, but I also know, parents want to know what's being taught in the classroom and how do we find the right balance for that.
I mean, that's a good, like, the parents do wanna know what, if there's a supplemental material being used, it's different than library. It was a good legal distinction, that there's a substantial legal difference between supplemental materials and library materials, which we've captured in the existing policies and AGs. That is vetted and captured in these policies and AGs. Even if it's homegrown, it's vetted and captured by our own legal counsel.
Yeah,
So can we talk through E and then come back to,
E,
I think we're still under discussion, so there'll be.
we are still in discussions, we can, and
The
then
action
like we
will be
said,
later.
they're related, so why don't we talk through E? And then we can finish our discussion and move through action and I'll get home.
it's only, we're not 2 hours in yet.
Yeah, it's still sun out there.
We're beating the curriculum.
Might be,
Yes, we are.
So I put this, I requested that this go on here, obviously after the last full board meeting where we heard all of the speakers. And then also had some board discussion about the presentation of a policy from a community group saying, hey, we'd like you to look at this. And at a very high level, I don't know that we need a hard and fast policy at this point because I don't know if this has happened in Menominee Falls before, I'm not aware of it, I don't know how often it happens out, like, I guess globally, I kind of did a quick Google search and it seems like maybe this is actually more common than I thought. But I guess the triage of them is that, you know, everything that is, you know, because like obviously people could, you know, email us policy or they could show up to a meeting or, right, there's a million ways, someone could hand it to you in the grocery store, I suppose. Is that something that, as I guess board president / policy committee chair, if more come up this year, you know, I read them all and decide what comes, we bring everything here, how would you like the triaging of those proposals to happen?
come through. I mean, we do get requests, whether they're for policies or other things that, depending on what it is, we send it to Munis, there might be other things that it's for the board to consider. I think it's fair that we do consider it, whether it makes it to a committee meeting or not. I think we have to vet, you know, is what being proposed aligned to like our district aims and like all
Sure.
of that. I'm open to, you know, having it in the policy if they are, like they could align with our district aims. I could go both ways. It could also just be one of us feels we, you know, this policy deserves more attention, we can, you know, email you to ask to put it on the agenda too.
That is true.
I don't know, do you have any comments?
Well, I'd lean towards policies being brought forward, generally towards them being discussed in committee. And we can decide if they're workable or not, good ideas or bad ideas. And I think that would be the better way to go. I've looked at our website where it says for school board policy, policy proposals might be initiated from any source of the school district. Normally, suggestions for policy will be referred directly to the superintendent who will discuss the matter with the individual or group concerned. a first version of a policy will be drafted. So I'm wondering how that fits into how we work as a committee.
And where is that in, that's our
That's,
currently active,
it's on our website on school board policy. And it says, click here to view current school board policies, labeled policy manual, effective through 6/30/26, as well as a new manual that is effective 7/1/26.
oh, so it's not a policy, but it is on a web page on our school district page about
So
policy.
yeah, and we have policy on this under 9130.
Yes,
Existing 9130, public requests, suggestions, or complaints. I just recommend the board follow existing policy or change it, because it scripts out exactly what, in this situation,
I'm looking at
any
this.
individual having a legitimate interest in the staff programs, any individual or individuals have the right to present a request, a suggestion, or a complaint to the district and the board. At the same time, the board reserves the right, and then it gets into non-discrimination and protecting staff, and then grievance procedures. And then it goes on in the next sentence to say it's the desire, and it's our current policy, it's the desire of the board to address any such matters through direct informal discussions. It is only when attempts at informal resolution fail that more formal procedures shall be used. But then it gets into the formal procedures, first level, second level, third level, fourth level.
yeah, and I had seen that, and I read that first sentence in 9130, and I was hopeful it was going to give me more about policies, and then the rest of it really is just when you are, it kind of doesn't apply to the it's more about someone being upset with a of something, so, but I do agree that I did note that, I didn't see what on the website, Steve, I said, I need to spend more time on the public website, but.
And it's because of what Mr. Kramer just mentioned in 9130, it's more of a general, it covers requests from the community, but the detail in the homegrown policies that were vetted also by legal counsel was to get into the specifics about supplemental educational materials and to get into those specifics, which we currently do in challenges and all of those sorts of things. And it's because of what was just mentioned by Mr. Kramer, that as you read, and that's a lot of boilerplate, not all, the boilerplate's in here, but you'll see a lot of that same language where, yep, any individual can bring something forward, and then you try to resolve it informally, address it, but at some level, the authority for policy being created or adjusted rests here. And then, once it leaves here, it goes to the full board for policy approval. So if there's gonna be a change, it should start here.
So
Something
It makes
new-
sense if we do give
So is
policy
it-
suggestions.
Does it suffice to say that if, whether for this policy or future policies, if they are shared with us, then as members of the policy committee, any one of us could say, hey, I would like to talk about this. And if we unanimously, if no one brings it forward and says, hey, I wanna talk about this, then it just never becomes an agenda item.
Yeah, I think if any of us would like to talk it further, I think this
Cause
would
like
be the
it's
place to
three
do it.
board members to screen something and say, hey, does this at least merit a discussion?
So what's our policy on when a member of the committee asks to have something added to an agenda?
That's what I'm saying, I'm saying that, it would seem that the cleanest path forward, that would be, right, so tomorrow someone emails, whatever, a policy to the board that says, you should do X, Y, Z. If all three of us if we read it and we say, we already have a policy that does this, and actually this conflicts with state law, and we all kind of say, thank you for your time, and that's it, then it dies. But if Steve, if you say, you know what, I think there's some validity here, I think we need to discuss it, and maybe we need to tweak our existing policy, even if we don't need to accept this new policy, we need to tweak something in our exit, like any one of the three of us wants to do that, great, then we'll throw it on the agenda. If all three of us say, I don't think this merits further discussion, then it's,
You're just saying if one person is
I'm saying
interested.
any three of
Okay.
us, any of the three of us, yes.
Okay. I'm
Is that-
comfortable with that.
Good with you, Steve?
So going back to what you were saying, was it in, I think it was in 25-21. You mentioned an option 3. Was that 25-22?
Oh, got these so out of order.
I did mention option 3, yes.
How would that apply to the process of taking a book that was removed and reevaluating it for being inserted back into the collection?
Okay, so we're jumping from how we're gonna do this to the actual policy now, okay. I mean, as I read that, it would, to me, would flow as something you could do if you chose option 3. You could drop this in a way that says.
What page are we on? Sorry.
Sorry, no,
I just lost mine. We have so many papers today, so.
Option 3?
25, 22.
Oh, 23, not 21.
22, yes. Option 3, I think you could very much use this for removal and reconsideration. I think, right, so whether you want something taken out of the library or you want something put back in the library, you have a concern about a specific library material. So I think A is mostly satisfied, yes, right, it's wordsmithing, whatever. And then I think the rest of it, like, so I don't wanna get, I don't know if I wanna get too much into trying to specifically draft things. I was more mentioning option 3 as we were presented with this thing that is unvetted and brand new. But if it's something that we are going to pursue, there's a Neola option that would at least appear plausible. And that would be a better starting point than,
Yeah, and that's what I asked to be put on today's agenda.
sure.
I'm not asking the committee to endorse the proposal as submitted or take final action. I think it would be useful for the committee to review the proposal in the context of several related questions. What currently exists for responding to public requests to reconsider library instructional materials? Whether the policies in our transition address that type of request.
Sure, so as next steps, we're saying that we as a committee are going to look into making a reconsideration policy. And I think that I'm not opposed to that. I think, right, there's a way for the board to add something to the curriculum or libraries, right? The board can add whatever they want. The board can take away whatever they want. And an existing policy, the community can request to take away anything. So to me, it's kind of missing that fourth box of the board can add or subtract, but the community can only subtract. Okay, I can follow that logic.
So I guess where it seems like we're at, we are suggesting that we have a future meeting that we work on at least 25, 22. Is that what we are
Sounds like a good idea.
suggesting?
And you want me to redraft from what we have or boilerplate?
I personally would like boilerplate. I think there is some safety in that, and I do like option 3. I'm not the only one at the table, but that's where I think would be a good starting point.
And I don't remember if our current process is more option. I think it is more option
Yeah,
Well,
I
it
mean, and
is a
maybe we
custom,
can
yeah.
discuss deeply though the options and have a heavier
Sure.
discussion.
I think it's going to be a slightly larger lift because of the way we have our, no, I don't, because in theory, you can change 25, 22 without touching 9130, they can be completely separate processes.
Mhm.
But the way Neola does the policy versus the split we have between policy and AG will just need to warrant some. I have not.
Cause basically, we're suggesting going from both a policy and a AG to just a straight policy, is that correct?
You would probably still
What-
have an
what-
AG.
Okay, does
Probably.
Neola have an AG to that, at some point you can share?
Yeah, we have 25, 22 AG right here.
We would do it all in
Oh, is that
draft.
boilerplate
That would all be in drafting.
drafting? Okay,
So then, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I'm going to go back to Dr. Thompson with, all this will go live on July 1, with the understanding that you would like 25, 22 redrafted from boilerplate, both policy and AG.
Go ahead.
And to see what that
yeah, have a discussion.
redraft looks like from Dr. Thompson, with strikeouts and everything viewable
Yeah.
from this boilerplate.
Yeah, and I would also be interested, because I know all the policies are interconnected, if we make that change, are there any downstream impacts and policies that we have to look at and consider?
But I'd like to see express language that it authorizes a way of reconsidering, not to use the Neola term of ours, but to use, I think, more the regular definition, that books that were removed, that there will be a policy for reconsidering their removal and, if approved, putting them back into the collection.
When you say you want a separate policy?
Well, I just want a policy where we can reconsider books that were removed.
I guess my ideal state would be all within, to me, it should be the same process. And it's forward and backwards following the same set of rules. Because if you had separate policies over time, if edits were made, you could have two different sets of rules, and I don't know enough about book law to have an opinion on there, but I imagine you could get into some weird situations if you had. And I think it's also just cleaner to have a single one that, like, if you wanna take something out, here's who you email. If you wanna put it back in, same thing.
I mean, it gets back to Neola's process as clear, like having it the same both ways if we can.
Yeah, I mean, what Dr. Thompson is gonna do is he'll go through and give recommendations that Neola will fully ensure.
Okay.
That sounds
And
great.
that to me is important to
And
have.
that's
Sure.
what you're gonna receive. You're gonna receive anything that he recommends, which is the only thing that I'll bring forward in terms of him redrafting, is we're gonna make selections based on what else, like 25-21, 91-30. He's gonna look at our whole book, and then we'll redraft 25-22. Bring it to policy committee, we'll set that in the future. I don't have a date right now, but I'm thinking July,
Mhm.
Maybe August.
No.
And I personally am comfortable, unless 25-22 is connected to 25-21 and has that downstream effect, I'm comfortable, let's waiting and see how the administration of the supplemental 25-21 plays out, as you suggested, for what, a quarter, see how it's going. I'm comfortable with that. So I guess we're really just talking about 25-22 for right now.
Okay. And then the timing of when we hold either a special meeting where all we're talking about is 25-22.
Yeah, and it's another
or-
update with Neola, but I wouldn't wanna wait till we have the next one in November. I would shoot for July, August.
Certainly. I would guesstimate, just based on redrafting, that we can be redrafted and have a document at least in draft by middle to late July, at the latest. And that once I have a timeline,
Sure.
you know, we can reach out about it.
Holidays and vacations and whatnot, so.
Yeah,
I think
I mean,
that's a reasonable timeline.
That works.
And then obviously, if, I don't know if Neola has a specific, I assume that 25-22 is their policy on all of that, given the language, but I don't know if there's, like you said, they have a lot of policies in the closet that maybe they can dig something out, but I'm sure he would bring that forward, but,
I'll ask. And like I said, whatever is gonna be pre-drafted, in other words, strikeouts and selections made, will be something that Neola fully ensures. That's what I'll bring to the
Okay.
next meeting,
Okay,
which will be
thank you.
specifically 25-22, and any AGs with 25-22, which there's going to be.
Yeah,
There's gonna be an AG for 25.
yeah, and then like I said, just if there's a downstream impact that we have to consider.
And we'll boilerplate the AG too, right? Okay, just to be clear about it. All right, I got it.
is there any other discussion?
Good.
Sounds good.
Okay, we will move into action. So, we will go to the first action item. I am looking for a motion to approve the Act 89 special update as presented with any minor edits or clarifications based on our questions.
All motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes.
And that'll get brought to the regular board meeting in discussion and action for the whole board.
And then the next action item,
I think we're tabling.
yes, I was going to make a motion to table any reconsideration of the listed policies 25-21, 25-22, 91-30, in addition to their associated AGs for the time being.
But tabling to like July, is that what you're suggesting?
Yes.
We
Okay,
can-
I just wanna make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, we don't wanna set a specific.
Yes, no, I agree, I just wanted to make sure I
So
understood.
right now, tabling it puts it out, we're not
Yeah.
gonna act on it.
Indefinitely.
You'll
Yep,
vote on,
that's
But we,
you'll vote on the
it's,
table.
it's an indefinite table, but we've already
a definite
established a
timeline.
follow-up
Okay.
timeline.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, in Robert's rules, if you set a specific date and don't hit it, then it dies and.
okay, so we're just gonna table it.
We don't want
Okay,
that to happen.
okay. Do we have to,
Motion.
oh,
So, yes, I made the motion, so I would need a second to table it.
he seconded.
Yep.
Okay,
I'll
sorry,
second.
I didn't hear you. Is there any discussion on that?
I'm good.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And no one's opposed, that passes. Okay, are there any future agenda items that anyone else would like to bring forward?
There's one that I'd like to, I was gonna bring it to this meeting and it was a longer, I'm glad I didn't, but I have a book that will start, book study on policy governance. And it's a model, it's a governance model. A lot of times the superintendents working with boards, there's a lot of different governance models. And the ones that I am trained on and most superintendents are trained on are something called policy governance. So I purchased some books for the board members, so not just the committee members, but we'll start with committee at our July or early August, whenever this meeting will get set. We'll start with the book, it's very brief. It talks about policy governance is,
So it's more just like an education piece, not
Yes.
a, okay,
yes, it's nothing to be voted on, but it's more of an understanding about governance and governance frameworks. And there's a lot of different governance frameworks, policy governance is one of the most popular. But I'll also make the book available to the whole board, but I'll start it here. It's good information, it's brief reading, I'll highlight a few things, we won't spend more than 10 minutes on it. But I'll just give a high level overview, cliff notes if you will. It'll help understand my perspective and the training that I have on governing via policy.
Okay.
You know, as I bring things back to policy and AGs, It's more about making sure that, all committees are important, but the whole district and all of our governance through the board, it's critical that we get this, one meeting on 25-22. Sounds like that's what we're doing. Well, then we're gonna make some progress there. But that has trickle effects for the whole district in operations.
Yeah, I mean, making a policy is just one part, it's also how you roll out the policy and get people.
So this book, I mean, it's brief, it's by Carver, pretty popular in some of the education that superintendents go through, that it talks about governance from a policy perspective. What that means and
Okay.
everybody's
Okay.
roles,
Sounds good.
all right?
With that, I am looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Oh, motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Give them a second to
Oh, yes.
I'm going.